Episode 9 of New and Noteworthy.
How you doing, guys? This is Ron Fugel with FireandAdjust.com, and you're listening to Dave Westwood in the New and Noteworthy podcast.
Are you ready to experience the future? Welcome to the New and Noteworthy podcast, where it's out with the old and in with the new. Dave Westwood brings you the celebrities of tomorrow as today's newest podcasters share their stories, their journey, and their show. So get ready, because the New and Noteworthy podcast starts now.
My guest today has been an online entrepreneur since the age of 15 and a blogger since 2007. He's also the host of a podcast that can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday called Rise of the Entrepreneur. Zac Johnson, welcome to the show.
Hey, Dave. Thanks so much for having me here.
Hey, no problem. It's an honor. So your show's called Rise of the Entrepreneur, but you've always had that entrepreneurial spirit, even as a kid.
Yeah, so definitely. It was like, I've been in the industry for nearly 20 years now, but it definitely goes back to when I was a kid. And I would always be driving around my parents, and I'd see billboards all over the place. And I'd be like, so Dad, how many people do you think actually see that billboard? And then what are they paying for that? And this was like years before the internet or anything, but I had that same mentality, and it just was always something in my mind about business and how to make money. So when I was in school, I wasn't carrying books in my book bag so much. It was more about soda and sports cards, because these kids would go to lunch and they'd have some extra money left over. And since the schools weren't selling soda, I could easily sell a 6-pack of soda that I paid $2 for $1 each. So I was making some good profit every day. And that was really the first way that I learned how to make money as a kid.
Now, did your dad help fund any of these things to hook you up with inventory?
Oh, yeah. Well, they were like buying soda anyway, so it was no big deal at all for me to just go into the refrigerator and grab like 6 or 10 cans to bring to school. So they've always supported me in everything I've done.
Yeah, that's cool. So now, obviously, after that, much of your success came through affiliate marketing, and you were in that business really in its infancy. So tell us more about that experience.
Yeah, so around 1995, 96, I was around the sophomore at that time, and the internet was really just starting to come out, and everybody was getting online. And AOL was the big place to be, so I'm figuring there's got to be some ways to make money on the internet. So I figured out how to start making websites using Microsoft Front Page. And also had some graphics programs where I would create banners for my own sites. And on AOL, they actually had a chat room called the AOL Web Diner, where there was other people who had websites. And they were like, hey, how do you get these cool banners for your site? And I said, well, I make them. So it turned out that a lot of people wanted these banners, and I would actually charge them $1, and I'd make them a banner. But this was years before PayPal or any other payment systems were available. So I'd make banners for people, and they would send me $1 in the mail. But unfortunately, not all of them did. So I'd get kind of ripped off half the time. But that was really the first way that I figured out how to make money online. And that kind of led into affiliate marketing over the years. I found out about the Amazon affiliate program, and I would earn a commission for every visitor that I sent to Amazon.com that would actually make a purchase. So I created a celebrity website, and I listed all the products on Amazon.com. And basically that site ranked really well in the search results. And every time someone found my website and went over to Amazon, I would earn a commission off that sale.
Wow, and I know Amazon's certainly changed their commission structure over the years, but just in general, how has that industry really changed over the years?
Yeah, affiliate marketing in the beginning, it's just like grown like crazy, because I mentioned Amazon.com, and they were one of the first people to really try this out, and they would not be the Amazon today if they basically didn't do that early on. And Amazon was the first site that I found to start doing affiliate marketing with. But at that point, I realized I would have to make money for someone to actually pull out their credit card and spend the product. So I was pushing over 6 figures in sales for Amazon, and I would get around 5 to 15%. And granted, this was great for a kid still in high school, but then I actually found out about the whole other side of affiliate marketing, which is referred to as CPA marketing, which is cost per action. So instead of having to get people to pull out a credit card, I can get $1 to $30 for someone if they want to pull out their information instead, and basically fill out a form for how they can get a free mouse pad or sign up for a new credit card. So that was basically the whole other side of the industry, which was making so much more money than actually having to pull out a credit card. So that's just one way the affiliate marketing has evolved over time. It expands across every platform, and it's really the foundation for so many businesses on the internet today.
Yeah, and you've certainly been extremely successful with that. So, that being said, you branched out from there. You went into blogging. and then into the podcast. So how did the blog come about?
Well, let's look at the past 14 years real quick. In 2000, I went to my first internet marketing conference, which was called Commission Junction University. So me and my dad flew across the country. I took a week off high school, and then that was the first one. And then in 2002, I spoke at my first conference, which was called Affiliate Force. So things were getting really serious with affiliate marketing. And then in 2006, I created a MySpace resource site that made over $1 million in profit within a year's time. So all this information that I've had over the years, all the success and all the failures, I said it would only make sense for me to start a blog. That seems to be what everybody's doing right now. So in 2007, I launched ZacJohnson.com, and it's got over 1,000 articles on it, and it just basically is out there to help people learn how to make money online.
Yeah, and certainly with blogging, you mentioned having over 1,000 articles, content marketing in terms of SEO is really kind of the way to go these days. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so people find my website based on every method out there that you can do. I speak at conferences. Other people write about me. I get featured on different podcasts such as this one. People interview me on their blogs. And it's just, I focus on every variable possible for getting people to the site. And it's just continually grown over the years. And the opportunities that are as a result of the blog are just immeasurable compared to everything I've done before the blog.
So that being said, you've launched a podcast as well, Rise of the Entrepreneur. What led you to that?
Once I realized how much opportunities came to me once I launched the blog, I started thinking, what can I do to branch out again and take the blog and my business to that next level? So I've met so many people over the years, and I wanted to feature them in a way that I could reach a whole new audience. And that's where I came up with the podcast. And the idea behind Rise of the Entrepreneur is to get the actual story of all the people that I interview and not just what they're currently working on today. Because it's easy for someone to just tell their story of how they've made all this money or they've made all these life-changing decisions. But actually the steps that they took and the downturns and the upsides of everything it took to get them to where they are today. So that's what's important to me and why I started this latest podcast.
Gotcha. And, you've definitely had some pretty interesting guests on your podcast so far. You had John Chow, Matthew Lesko, some others. Do you have anyone that kind of stands out as one of your favorites?
It's really interesting because every person that I've interviewed on the show, well, not almost every person, but many of them, I'm already good friends with, but still I learn something new about them all the time because I try and ask the questions that most people don't ask and get the story from earlier on. But each of them relates so much with me, but individually they all mean so much, so I can't pick a specific one. But Jeremy's story was great because he went into detail on how he went from having no business, being in debt, and taking his business to what it is today, but also giving us a behind the scenes of what it's like from switching a personal business where it's just you making all the decisions to actually hiring people and becoming a real company and trying to go out to California and get funding from companies. So going from an individual affiliate marketer is one thing, but running a startup is completely different. So having these people come on the show and actually sharing these real life experiences and stories, that's just the bread and butter. That's just perfect. Yeah.
So how have you seen the podcast kind of change? You talked about taking your business to the next level. Have you seen any changes in your business or exposing yourself to a new audience as a result of the podcast?
Yeah, of course. Once I decided that I was going to start a podcast, the first thing I had to do was make sure I connected with all the right people, all those who are already successful, all those who are already doing blogging, and already in the internet marketing space. So I went out to social media marketing world in San Diego, and guys like Pat Flynn, John Lee Dumas, and Cliff Ravenscraft, they were all out there. So it was really important for me to dive in and make sure I knew what I was doing before I got in. And actually the podcast was supposed to go live much earlier than it did, but through complications with hardware and trying to figure things out, I wasn't sure what I wanted to name the show. So there's a lot of complications in the way, but actually at the end of the day, hearing people that say, hey, I've been following your blog for a long time and I never sent you an email, but now I'm listening to the podcast and that's just awesome and they love it. So the podcast is still new, and I'm sure there's tons of people listening to it that I haven't heard from, but I'm sure the opportunities are just piling up as well as it's going to increase in time.
Yeah, and you mentioned not hearing from people. I know one of the things that I hear podcasters talk about is not getting that immediate feedback. Whereas, you have a blog, somebody, reads the blog and they comment on it, or you post that link to, Facebook or Twitter and you're getting interaction on that. How's that been for you with regard to, like you said, kind of getting that feedback from people with the podcast?
Yeah, it's just like blogging in the beginning, because you can easily set up a domain name, a WordPress, and you're going to be writing a long time before people actually find your website, and then even longer before people start commenting. So what's cool about podcasting is you can actually look at the numbers behind the scene and see how many people are downloading it, and then you look at your iTunes ratings, and the numbers are like 1,000 times more people are downloading it than actually leaving ratings or getting in touch with you. So it's just really a waiting game to know that your stuff is out there and people appreciate it and they're downloading it. And so many people are concerned about starting a podcast to make money, but it's very, very slow process if you want to make money. And you really have to have a business model behind the podcast, because you're not going to make money just by throwing another podcast out there and say, I'm going to interview so and so many people a week and then I'm going to get advertisers, because the space is quickly becoming saturated. Not like blogging, but you really need a good business model behind it.
Absolutely. As you point out, it's in its infancy, but it is growing by leaps and bounds, and the place is getting crowded. So the complications that you referred to in starting your podcast, what do you think was the biggest challenge?
I think the biggest challenge was already having an existing business where I had to segregate a certain amount of time to, and also that perfectionist side in me that couldn't just launch it without being 100% confident with everything that was going on. I originally wanted to name the show the Zac Johnson Show, because I already have a Zac Johnson brand established in the world of internet marketing, and that's mainly who I'm targeting my audience to. But then I didn't want to limit myself to just the Zac Johnson brand, and as I reach out to celebrities or people outside of the internet, they might see that and not really know what it means. So then I had to come up with something like a name for the show that was just really awesome. And that's where I came up with Rise of the Entrepreneur. And it kind of has a 300 Spartan twist to it. And then I had to contact an audio company to come up with the intro music. And then that took a few weeks. And then I had some problem with the equipment where it wasn't syncing up with my Mac computer. So that was another month or so of taking that. Actually, it was several months trying to figure out how to get that to work, not being happy with it, sending it back and getting a new one to work with. So lots of complications. So nothing ever goes as planned. But in the end, it all worked out great, and I'm really happy with the product that it is today.
Yeah, it certainly worked out great, because you did make a new and noteworthy list. So obviously people are finding your show. So, that being said, making new and noteworthy, was that your biggest thrill to date with the podcast, or is there something else within the interviews that you think may be a bigger thrill for you?
Yeah, I definitely have to say that was another area that I messed up with, because I had this big plan of how I was going to promote it during the first 8 weeks or whatever, but more complications came up and it just didn't come together. I did make the new and noteworthy list, and the highest the podcast has ranked so far in the business category is number 25. So it's awesome to see my name up there with like some of the other top names in the industry. But yeah, seeing new accomplishments every day, such as people listening to it or getting interviews with people that seem untouchable or worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and for them to take out 30 minutes of their day to do an interview, that's just amazing.
No, absolutely. And I'm finding that to be the case myself. So now, one of the things you talked about, we've touched on social media. Some of the big names. You were at a social media conference with Cliff Ravenscraft, John Lee Dumas, Pat Flynn. With regards to social media, how much easier is it to network now than in the past before Facebook and Twitter and, some of the other platforms?
It's definitely a lot easier because so many people are putting stuff out there. And I've been going to conferences since 2000, so that's about 14, 15 years now. And that makes all the difference in the world, getting that face-to-face interaction, because you can contact these people through email, social media, but you also have to realize that hundreds, if not thousands of people are doing the same thing. So getting that face-to-face interaction and just having a 10-minute conversation with them at a conference or whatever, they're going to remember you. They're going to appreciate that. And that's the best way to score interviews or get in touch with people you know. And also, I get emails nonstop asking for interviews or for people to guest blog on my sites or whatever. And the problem with most of them is that they're just so generic, and you know that they're sending them out to a ton of different people. So if you're going to try and contact anyone to be on a podcast, you have to make sure it's personal, actually grab their attention, try not to waste any of their time, and just make it as simple as possible.
No, great advice, absolutely. So, that being said, obviously the face-to-face contact, really, there is nothing like it, but social media can give you more of a reach. However, as you kind of alluded to, sometimes with social media, you can almost kind of come off as like spammy. So what's the best way to get people to connect with you and without coming across in that manner?
One of the best ways to connect with someone is to find what they're passionate about, or find out if they have kids and what their kids like. Because let's say someone's very hard to get in touch with, but if you take the time to say, oh, I know you're a huge fan of so-and-so sports, did you see that guy score 50 points last night? That's a great way to engage conversation and not just send them a blanket email that says, hello, for the first time I'm asking you to please be on my show. Or you can also send a gift to their house, see what type of wine they like, or see what type of movies they like. And if they have a kid, you can follow up with a gift for them or whatever. It's not so much about trying to get creepy, but actually showing that you actually care and appreciate their time. And this is something that we saw a lot in the affiliate marketing space several years ago, where they would be contacting the top bloggers and offering free passes to an event or a real nice dinner if you go to a conference. So it's just that extra step in showing that you actually care and appreciate the time that someone's going to have to spend to be on your podcast or feature you on a blog.
Yeah, great advice. I would absolutely agree with you there. So, one of the things you brought up sports, and I know you're from Central Jersey, I believe, right, out down by the shore. So, Giants fan?
Actually, I'm all about the basketball.
Okay, there you go. So, who's your team?
It's a funny story. My team is actually the Orlando Magic, and they're really horrible right now. But way back when I was much younger, my father and I were down in Orlando, and we were going to a Magic game. And then during that game, there was a few people talking about Anthony Hardaway's Hummer that he had, and he was one of the big players at the time. So after me and my dad were leaving the game, we're driving down the road, and we see this huge Hummer on the side of the road. So my dad's like, oh, that's got to be Penny's car. So we stop in, and it's a bar, and I go in there with my dad. I'm probably around 14 at the time, maybe 15, and then all the players are in there. Shaq is in there, Horace Grant's in there, Anthony Hardaway, all these classic players from the Orlando Magic. And as Shaq's leaving the place, he's got a ton of people around him, and I scream, Shaq, can I shake your hand? And he turns around and shakes my hand. So that's a story that resonates with me forever, but it's also a story of opportunity. Because what if we didn't hear that story, and then what if my dad didn't see that car, and what if we didn't go inside? I wouldn't have that story with me forever. And that same type of opportunity exists with everything in business and in life as well. So if you can get out to conferences and connect with some of the most interesting people in the industry that can really bring your podcast or blog to the next level, you have to take advantage of all those opportunities that you have.
Oh, absolutely. I am glad you're not a Giants fan, because as an Eagles fan, we might have to end this call.
Oh, definitely.
Right now. But really cool story, and unfortunately, I am from the Philadelphia area, so we've been suffering with the Sixers for a while. So I can feel your pain as far as bad basketball. So Zach, what can listeners expect in future episodes of your podcast?
Future episodes are going to be awesome. I'm booking new people all the time. And, of course, as the show gets bigger, it'll be easier to book larger people to your show. But in the end, it's all about providing value that helps my listeners get their stuff to that next level. So I've been working on blogging.org, which is a commercial that appears in each episode. And a lesson from that is basically you never know how long something is going to take. And I've had 25 episodes live on the podcast, but blogging.org actually didn't launch until last week officially. So you never know how things are going to intertwine with your podcast, but over time I'm going to be launching blogging.org, which will go in line with Rise of the Entrepreneur, and it'll help people establish their business. And people can actually go to ZacJohnson.com and read notes from each of the episodes as well, so they can get in touch with everyone I interview. So that's the end goal for the show, to introduce people to new outlets and also allow them to get in touch with the people I interview as well.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, I know personally I'm looking really forward to it. I have listened to a couple of your episodes, so, I know you're putting out some great stuff. So as a podcaster, I know most other podcasters, one of the reasons they get into this business is because, they start listening to podcasts and then they're kind of hooked and they learn how to do it. So, I don't know if that's the case with you, but if so, do you have a favorite podcast that you listen to?
Yeah, I actually have a story for this one as well. As you mentioned, I live in New Jersey, and unfortunately our house was pretty much damaged from the flood, and we had about 2 feet of water inside. So during the reconstruction process, we had to move to an apartment, and I somehow stumbled across Pat Flynn's website, Smart Passive Income, and I went to it before in the past, but something made me check it out and look more into his podcast. And since I didn't have as much to do at this apartment besides working on my business, I started listening to his podcast, and I realized, well, this is pretty cool. Maybe it's something that I could do. So that was one of the inspirations for starting the podcast, and how I found out more about social media marketing world. And I saw him out there, and I said, all right, I got to get out there and meet with some of the top people as well. And I also met with Lewis Howes out there, who I became good friends with since. So he has School of Greatness podcast. So the Smart Passive Income podcast and School of Greatness are two of the ones that I really like.
And I am subscribed to both of them, so I agree. Very good podcasts. And for anyone that hasn't listened, recommend that you check them out as well. So if you had to start your business, whether it's the affiliate marketing, the blogging, or your podcast over from scratch, what would you do differently?
I would say that I would try to not spread myself too thin. I would figure out what I'm awesome at and restrict myself to that. Because over the years, I've created so many side websites or jobs that just ended up taking more time and frustration than anything else. And if I could look back 15, 20 years and say, if I just focus on this one thing, it's going to be amazing in 1 to 5 to 10 years. And a good example of that is the blog, and that was launched in 2007. But imagine if I started that back in 2000, where I created ZacJohnson.com and started building a following 7 years earlier. That would have just been pretty amazing compared to what it is today, which is already amazing. But I'm trying to stress the importance of not spreading yourself too thin and really zoning in on what you're good at. And the same thing could be said for a podcast. If you're going to focus on a podcast, it really is so much more work than you think you're going to get into, because the show might be an hour long, but then you have an hour to 2 hours of researching each person that you're interviewing. Then you have possibly another hour of doing editing if that's what you're going to be doing. And then you have all the promotion afterwards. So you don't want to create something that is low in quality. So you have a lot of competition out there, so it's going to take a lot of time to really make something perfect.
Good advice. So, you mentioned about kind of sticking to one thing and finding that one thing that you're really awesome at. Do you think that's a curse of the entrepreneur as opposed to someone that goes out and works a 9-to-5 job, that, they're always looking for that shiny new object, so to speak?
It's a curse and it's a blessing at the same time, because I mentioned earlier I had a MySpace site that ended up doing $1 million profit in a year. And if I wasn't trying new things all the time, my original business ideas wouldn't have lasted, because the affiliate marketing industry and internet marketing industry in general, it does not stay constant. Because you even look at MySpace, they were one of the biggest sites in the world, and they were making hundreds of millions of dollars, and then they just disappear when Facebook comes out, and they completely wipe it out. So as much as I'm focusing on be awesome at what you're doing, you have to be open to adapting with your environment as well. So whether it's podcasting and you're just focusing on niche bloggers, why not expand that out a little bit to niche bloggers who are focusing on different products, just different ways that you can really make sure that you're not going to go by the wayside should anything change in the industry.
Well, and that's a good point, because, as you mentioned, especially with MySpace, there's kind of that boom splat. It hits a peak, and if you're not there at the right moment, you may be catching that wave on the downside. So, excellent point that you made there. So one of the other questions that I wanted to ask you, and you kind of touched on it in the way that you do interviews, is you always try and find out something about the person that you don't already know. So you've blogged for a long time, you have your podcast. Tell us something that podcast listeners or blog readers may not already know about Zac Johnson.
Yeah, sure. Something that I usually don't talk that much about, not because it doesn't fit in, but just because it doesn't really come up, is that I'm actually a certified dealer in casinos in craps, roulette, blackjack, and poker. And that was because there's a casino school right by my house. And, of course, I'm in New Jersey, so I'm about an hour away from Atlantic City. And my grandparents would always go to Atlantic City, and I wasn't old enough to play, but they would always go there, and they would come back with their chips, and that goes into the whole business and money value thing. So I thought, well, I'm running my own business, and it would just be kind of cool to know how to really play all these games before I turn 21. So I'm around 19, 20 at the time, and I get certified in all these games. And if I wanted to, I could actually become a dealer in any of these casinos. And it was just a really cool experience. And craps is one of the hardest games to understand in a casino. They have bets out there like crazy. You got to figure out who's placing what bet. And it's just really great for the mind and something fun that I enjoy doing. So that's something that a lot of people probably don't know about me, that I could walk into any casino and start dealing.
Yeah, pretty cool. So if, the whole podcast and blogging thing doesn't work out, then you're all set.
Yeah.
But I think you're going to be okay. So tell everybody where they can connect with you, Zac.
I'm pretty much Zac Johnson everywhere. So ZACJOHNSON.com, ZacJohnson.com. You can find the podcast on there. It's called Rise of the Entrepreneur. And if you go to iTunes and look for Rise of the Entrepreneur or Zac Johnson, you're going to find me. I'm on Twitter as Zac Johnson, on Facebook and Google Plus and LinkedIn as Zac Johnson. Just shoot me an email. I don't care what you're asking. I'll try and help you. And it's been great.
Hey, well, it's been great having you today. Zac Johnson, thanks very much for being here.
Thanks, Dave. It's an honor.
All right. Yep. Take care.
New and Noteworthy is brought to you by.
Do you want a new logo, website, t-shirt, or print design for your business? 99 Designs helps you host a design contest where a crowd of graphic designers compete to give you a design you love or your money back. Go to newandnoteworthy.net/99designs or click the 99 Designs banner on our website to learn more.
You've been listening to New and Noteworthy. To get show notes for today's episode, along with other great resources, go to newandnoteworthy.net. You can also connect with the show at the New and Noteworthy page on Facebook or follow Dave on Twitter at Hugh Westwood. And if you like today's episode, don't forget to subscribe to the show and leave a review on iTunes or Stitcher.